What if the very smoke that calms your mind also clouds your soul? In the hidden corridors of ancient temples and in the silence of mystical caves, sages have long whispered warnings about plants that dream for you. These were not condemnations, but cautions, echoes of a deeper knowing that recognized the double-edged sword of altered states. Among these plants, one stands at the threshold between medicine and illusion: cannabis. Marijuana, called ganja, hashish, the sacred herb, has been revered and reviled across time. In some traditions, it is seen as a doorway to the gods, in others, a veil over the truth. But behind the cultural chaos and political noise lies a subtler truth, one that most never dare to ask. What does smoking marijuana do to the soul? Not the body, not the mind, but the spirit. This is not a moral argument. It is not a debate about legality or productivity. This is a journey into the inner dimensions of consciousness, where your aura whispers, where your will pulses, where your spirit either awakens or drifts into sleep. In this video, we will travel through time to uncover the ancient relationships between humanity and cannabis. We'll explore the hidden teachings buried in mystical texts and spiritual lineages, and we'll examine with clarity and compassion the energetic and spiritual consequences of habitual marijuana use, from its power to open subtle gateways to its quiet erosion of personal will. You will learn why cannabis was once reserved for priests, not the public, why ancient seers warned of false illumination, and what truly happens to your astral body, your chakras, and your karmic path when you inhale the sacred smoke too often or without intention. Prepare yourself. This is not merely about a plant. It's about the fine thread between liberation and illusion, a thread too many are unaware they've already crossed. To understand the spiritual consequences of smoking marijuana, we must step back, far back into the shadowed chambers of history, where plants were not consumed casually but ceremonially, where each herb was seen not merely as a substance, but as a spirit, an intelligence with its own will, character, and purpose. Cannabis has a long, complex spiritual lineage. In ancient India, it was one of the 5 sacred plants mentioned in the Atharva Veda. Called bhang, or ganja, it was believed to be a gift from Shiva, the wild, ascetic god who dances the universe into being and destroys illusion with a single glance. Sadhus and yogis would consume cannabis in small, consecrated quantities, often during rituals, to dissolve the ego and enter meditative trance states. But even in these contexts, it was never seen as a toy. It was a tool, and tools, if misused, become dangerous. In the Sufi mystic traditions of the Middle East, cannabis appeared again, this time as hashish. The dervishes who consumed it were seeking the fana, the dissolution of the self, the ecstatic annihilation in the divine. But again, it was ritually bound, supervised by spiritual elders, and never meant for prolonged or habitual use. Why? Because the danger was not the plant. It was the subtle illusion of awakening it could produce. And then there's the Rastafari movement, which reveres cannabis as the wisdom weed, a sacrament that brings one closer to Jah, God. Yet even here, the ritual and intention are paramount. It is smoked in prayer, in reasoning sessions, in communion. Never idly, never just to escape. What do all these traditions have in common? Reverence, intention, limitation. But as cannabis crossed into modernity, something shifted. It was no longer a sacred herb. It became a commodity. The ceremonial bowl turned into a recreational pipe, and as the plant's status was stripped of its sanctity, so too was our understanding of its spiritual effects. Esoteric teachings, from the Hermetic mysteries to the occult writings of the Rosicrucians, often warned of false openings, experiences that mimic true spiritual insight but bypass the necessary inner work. These teachings emphasize that real illumination comes from sustained effort, purification of the body, mastery of thought, devotion to the inner flame. Substances that force open the gates too quickly were said to risk spiritual fragmentation, or worse, entity attachment, where subtle non-physical beings could influence or inhabit the weakened energy field of the user. The body, they said, is a temple, the spirit a flame, and certain plants are like wind. They can fan the flame or extinguish it. Cannabis, when used in sacred context, can be a temporary bridge to the subtle realms, but bridges are not homes. Stay too long and you may forget how to walk on solid ground. With this historical lens, we can now begin to explore the mechanics of what happens to the spirit when marijuana is used, both intentionally and habitually. Imagine your soul as a luminous body, wrapped in layers of subtle energy, like veils of light draped around a central fire. These veils are what many traditions call the aura, the subtle bodies, or sheaths, each corresponding to physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual planes. When you engage in spiritual practice, meditation, fasting, prayer, conscious breath, these layers become clearer, finer, more attuned to the higher vibrations of the cosmos. But what happens when a psychoactive substance like cannabis enters the equation? Cannabis does not merely affect the brain, it alters the entire energetic structure of the being. It temporarily loosens the grip of the ego, dissolves the boundaries between inner and outer reality, and heightens sensitivity to the astral and etheric planes. This is why music sounds more vivid, thoughts feel more poetic, and insights appear to flow like water. The veil thins, and for some, it vanishes entirely. This is the seductive power of cannabis. It opens doors. But, and here lies the great esoteric warning, it opens them without asking whether you are ready to enter. Imagine you are in a temple and someone hands you a key to the inner sanctum. You've never trained. You haven't purified yourself. You don't understand the symbols or the forces at play, yet you walk in dazzled. What you see may be beautiful, terrifying, or strange, but none of it is integrated. You are a guest, not a resident. When the high fades, so does the access. The insight becomes a memory, not a transformation. This is the crux of the spiritual consequence. Cannabis creates the illusion of advancement without the discipline of mastery. Now let us go deeper into the subtle mechanics. According to yogic teachings, the pranic body, your life force sheath, is responsible for the distribution of energy through nadis, energy channels, and chakras. When you consume cannabis, the prana becomes erratic. It may surge in some areas, often the higher chakras like the third eye or crown, while becoming depleted in others, especially the root and solar plexus. The result is a kind of disembodiment. You feel spiritual, but you lose grounding. This is why habitual users often feel disconnected from motivation, purpose, or physical drive. They are spiritually stimulated but physically dormant. They float rather than walk. They dream, but they do not do. The solar plexus associated with willpower becomes weakened. This is not just a metaphor, it is a real energetic effect. Esoteric science teaches that our power to act, to focus, to fulfill dharma flows from this fiery center. Cannabis, when overused, dims that fire. The user may gain visions but lose volition. They see much but manifest little. Even more subtly, the aura itself, the protective field that shields you from astral interference, becomes porous under the influence. In mystical language, cannabis softens the shell. This is why many users report heightened intuition or psychic sensitivity, but also why some become vulnerable to spiritual confusion, paranoia, or low-vibration entities. It's not simply the drug, it's the energetic openness without discernment. Thus we see the dual nature. Cannabis can act as a ladder, or as a trap. It can momentarily elevate the seeker, or slowly unravel the seeker's structure, replacing effort with escapism and intention with illusion. In Part 2, we will explore how these effects deepen over time, examine the karmic implications of habitual use, and uncover the secret reason why ancient initiates were forbidden from entering certain rites if they partook too often in psychoactive sacraments. In the mystery schools of antiquity, whether in Egypt, the Pythagorean Brotherhood, the Orphic rites, or the Himalayan monasteries, initiation was not given lightly. The aspirant had to prove their inner clarity, strength of will, and purity of body. There was a reason for this. The spiritual path is not just a journey of discovery, it is a path of refinement. And when a being seeks higher knowledge while tethered to lower habits, the energy becomes distorted. Cannabis, when used repeatedly without reverence, begins to entangle the energetic system in ways that are not always immediately visible. The initial softening of the aura becomes a habitual opening. And here lies a mystery few speak of: energetic bleeding. In subtle anatomy, the aura is not just a bubble of light. It is a matrix of intention, memory, karmic imprint, and soul architecture. When cannabis becomes a frequent part of one's lifestyle, especially without spiritual discipline, it can create tiny fissures in this matrix, portals through which foreign energies may drift. These are not necessarily malevolent entities in the demonic sense, but they are parasitic by nature. Hungry thought forms, emotional residues, or even elemental spirits may begin to nest in the subtle field, feeding on the loose psychic energy released during intoxication. This is why the ancient Essenes, the Gnostics, and certain Vedic paths issued stern warnings about the use of substances that artificially open the astral body. Do not breach the temple gates unless you can guard what enters. And yet this is not a message of fear, it is one of sacred responsibility. Because once you understand how cannabis works on a metaphysical level, you are no longer a passive user. You are a co-creator of your spiritual destiny. Let us now speak of karma, not as punishment, but as spiritual inertia. Every act carries a frequency. When you engage in a ritual or consume a sacrament with intention, you create upliftment. But when cannabis becomes habitual, an escape, a crutch, it embeds a different kind of karmic imprint, a pattern of bypassing, of refusing the lesson and opting for the vision without the work. The result? A soul that circles the same mountain over and over, believing it has climbed, while remaining in the same place. This is the illusion of progress. Even the visions, those shimmering downloads and mystical sensations, can become deceptive. The spiritual traditions often speak of astral glamour, beautiful but false imagery conjured by the lower astral realms to distract the seeker from the true inner journey. Cannabis, by opening this channel without purification, may expose one to these glamours. The visions feel profound, but they do not transform. They fade like dreams at dawn. There is also the phenomenon of psychic dependency. Over time, the psyche begins to associate higher states with the substance. Meditation without it becomes dull. Insight without it seems harder. And so the soul begins to outsource its awakening to a plant spirit, rather than cultivating the divine fire within. The inner alchemy is halted. It is no accident that in some ancient orders, those who partook in psychoactive substances too frequently were denied access to higher teachings. Not out of judgment, but because their vessels were not ready to hold the light without distortion. Their minds had been altered, their energy fields thinned, their willpower compromised. Still, the teaching is not do not use, but rather know what you are doing. Cannabis is a gatekeeper, not a guide. It opens a realm, but will not walk you through it. For that, you need discernment, discipline, and devotion. In the next section, we will step away from theory and turn to practice. How can one engage with or heal from cannabis use spiritually? What techniques can restore clarity, strengthen the aura, and reconnect the seeker to the source without dependence? Some doors are meant to be opened slowly. In our search for transcendence, for silence, for truth, we often reach for shortcuts. And cannabis, in its mystifying, gentle way, offers a taste of the heavens, without requiring the discipline to ascend. But the soul knows the difference between an invitation and an initiation. What we've explored today is not a rejection of the plant, but a revelation of its true nature. Cannabis is not inherently good or evil, it is a spirit. And like all spirits, it responds to how you meet it. With reverence, it may reveal insights. With dependency, it clouds the mirror of the self. So the question is not whether to use it, but who are you becoming when you do? The ancient initiates guarded this truth. Your consciousness is sacred ground. Every substance, every thought, every breath either builds the temple or breaks it. And only those who tend to their inner altar with clarity and courage will find the gates of true wisdom flung open, not temporarily, not through smoke and haze, but permanently from within. If something stirred in you today, if a memory whispered, if a truth echoed, honor that. You are not here by accident. You are a seeker, a builder of inner temples, a walker between worlds. And this journey back to sovereignty, back to sacredness, it begins now. If this message resonated with you, help more seekers find their path. Like this video to honor the light within. Subscribe to this channel for more hidden teachings, sacred techniques, and ancient truths brought to life. And in the comments below, tell us, have you experienced the spiritual effects of cannabis, either enlightening or disorienting? What lessons did it offer you? Your story may be the lantern that lights someone else's path. Until next time, walk gently, breathe deeply, and guard your flame.